Life often doesn't unfold the way you imagine it will. Growing up, I was the type who always had a plan, a clear map of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to achieve. Yet, as I sit here now, reflecting on the choices I've made and the turns my life has taken, I can't help but marvel at how unpredictably things can evolve. Back then, everything felt so straightforward, so certain. I had the ambition, the drive, and the focus to succeed. Or so I thought. When I first met Kelly during our college years, I was certain I'd found my perfect partner. She was everything I wasn't, outgoing, adventurous, and impossibly beautiful. Her energy drew me in, and before long, we were inseparable. Together, we navigated the chaos of school, dreaming about the future we would build. By the time we graduated, I was ready to take on the world, and with Kelly by my side, it seemed like nothing could stand in our way. The early years of our marriage were a whirlwind. I threw myself into my career, determined to climb the corporate ladder as quickly as possible. Kelly, ever the overachiever, had her sights set on law school and the prestigious career that would follow. We supported each other, sharing late nights, long commutes, and endless discussions about what came next. It wasn't always easy, but we made it work. We were a team, and that meant everything to me. But as time passed, the cracks began to show. They were small at first, almost imperceptible, moments of tension that neither of us acknowledged, busy as we were with our lives. Yet those tiny fractures grew, spreading beneath the surface until one day I realized that the foundation we'd built our relationship on wasn't as solid as I'd believed. And that's where this story truly begins, in a place of quiet doubt and growing unease, where every decision seemed to carry the weight of the world. Pennsylvania's late spring weather has a way of keeping you on your toes, and this year was no exception. April rolled in with unexpected warmth and heavy rains, throwing off my usual routines. Typically, I hold off on trimming the grass until mid-May, but this time the rapid growth demanded earlier attention. At least there wasn't a repeat of last year's late snowstorm, an April surprise that left us shoveling well into spring. Adjusting my plans to get the lawn in shape wasn't too much of a hassle, though. After the exhaustion of tax season, the chance to spend some time outdoors in the fresh air and sunshine was a welcome reprieve. Our house has a unique feature. The backyard slopes down to a stream and some woods. When the house was built, they used backfill to level the front, creating a sharp drop along the side. The basement is sealed at the front, but opens at the back, which allowed me to install a double-leaf door for storing my lawnmower and tools in the basement instead of cluttering the garage. It's one of my favorite features of the house. After mowing, I was eager to shower, especially since I'm allergic to grass. But as I reached the top of the stairs, I overheard my wife talking outside. I saw her friend's car, so I wasn't surprised by the voices. But then, I heard something that made me stop, hands still on the doorknob. I'm Robert Crane, though everyone calls me Bob. In school, I was nicknamed Hogan, after Robert Crane from Hogan's Heroes, a reference that doesn't really apply to me, given I was born long after the show aired. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with an accounting degree, earned my CPA, and joined a top firm in Philadelphia. Now, I lead a team overseeing audits and financial reviews. It's not thrilling work, but the pay is good, and it's given me a behind-the-scenes look at many companies. I specialize in forensic accounting, which involves tracing financial records to uncover fraud. I've even consulted with the FBI on a couple of cases. My wife, Kelly, studied political science and business and planned to go to law school. We met as freshmen when she caught my eye right away. She was tall, graceful, with strawberry blonde hair, and a smile that took me by surprise. I finally worked up the courage to talk to her, cracked a joke, and to my delight, she laughed. That led to us spending nearly every day together during college, much to our parents' dismay. By senior year, we were living together. After graduation, I joined a top accounting firm in Philadelphia, making a solid salary, while Kelly went to law school. I was able to take MBA classes funded by my company and commute by train to save money. 3 years later, Kelly graduated and I proposed at a birthday dinner. 6 months later, we were married. Kelly became a deputy district attorney in Bucks County, so we bought a house in Doylestown, where I could take the train into the city. It was a bit of a commute, but much easier than dealing with traffic on the Schuylkill or I-95. Kelly and her mom found us the perfect starter home, a 3-bedroom house with an office where we both worked. It was also close to Kelly's parents, who promised to help when we started a family. I'm an only child, and the idea of having siblings for our kids was something I'd always looked forward to. Kelly and I had talked about having children since freshman year, agreeing to wait until her career was more stable. Just 2 nights ago, we decided to stop using birth control and start trying for a baby. I couldn't be happier. But then, as I stood there, my hand on the doorknob, I overheard something that made my heart stop. "Hogan and I decided it's time to get pregnant," Kelly said, her voice filled with excitement. Olivia Watkins, her friend, responded with an enthusiastic, high-pitched giggle. I smiled, happy that Kelly and I were both on the same page about becoming parents. But then Olivia asked a question that immediately erased my smile. "This is great, Kel," Olivia said, "but what about Paul?" There was a pause. I could almost picture Kelly looking around, waiting for me to walk in. Then she spoke again. "I already told Paul I'm ending things. He took it well. After Grossman steps down, Paul thinks he has a good shot at moving up politically. If his affair with a married employee came out, it'd be a disaster for him. So it's better to just call it quits now." In an instant, my world came crashing down. Paul Evans, Kelly's boss at the DA's office, was a widower in his 40s with a young daughter. He had always been ambitious, talking about his plans to run for higher office, and now I knew exactly how Kelly had gotten access to all that confidential information. "Is that really true?" Olivia asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. The anger inside me flared up immediately. I had known Olivia for years. She was a classmate of mine before Kelly and I even met. I thought of her as a friend, but now I wasn't so sure. "Stop it," Kelly said, laughing nervously. "You're terrible. Paul was great in bed, but it was just about the Zex. No emotional attachment, just rough, dominating Zex. I love Hogan. I'm going to be a good wife and a great mother." How many more cliches was I going to hear? I thought, my mind racing. "So, cold turkey?" Olivia asked again, and Kelly giggled. "Not exactly," Kelly admitted. "Next week I'm having a meeting with Paul in Pittsburgh. We'll have a little farewell party. I'll miss the Zex, but Hogan and the baby are what matter now." I couldn't bear it any longer, but I didn't know how to move forward. I loved Kelly, but everything inside me was breaking. My business training kicked in, and I realized I needed to take a step back, clear my head, and come up with a strategy. I stomped up the stairs, determined, then opened the door and walked into the kitchen. Kelly and Olivia were sitting at the table, teacups in hand. A flicker of something, guilt maybe, crossed Kelly's face. "Honey, are you?" she asked, clearly concerned. That's when I realized my cheeks were wet with tears. "Allergies," I said quickly, trying to cover my emotion. "It's just going to be a rough spring." "Go take a shower," Kelly said, standing up. "Just leave your clothes by the bathroom and I'll wash them so they don't mess up your closet. I bought you a new pack of Claritin D last week. It's in the medicine cabinet." "Thanks," I muttered, heading for the stairs. I needed space, time to think through everything. The next morning, I used an early meeting as an excuse to get out of the house before Kelly woke up. The night before, I had pretended my allergies were acting up, retreating early to bed because I couldn't deal with everything. On the train, my mind kept circling back to what I had overheard. On one hand, Kelly had been unfaithful, but it seemed like it had been nothing more than a physical affair. In a twisted way, I almost felt like I should be grateful that she was coming back to me, intending to be a devoted wife and mother. Some might even say I should feel lucky, but there was a nagging voice inside my head asking, what's stopping her from doing it again? 10 years from now, when the kids are older, could she have another affair, just as casual and destructive? Then comes the divorce, with Kelly likely getting the kids and me drowning in child support payments. As an accountant, I always thought in terms of risk and reward. And this situation, it felt like a terrible investment. My trust in Kelly had been shattered. The just Zex excuse didn't hold any weight with me. The heart of the issue wasn't just the act, it was the total lack of respect. A cheater knows what they're doing is wrong. If they didn't, they'd do it openly. And I would have known from the beginning. As much as I hated to think about Kelly sleeping with Paul, it would have been easier to accept if she had just been honest with me. Instead, her actions screamed how little respect she had for me, for our relationship. Though I was at work, part of me couldn't focus. I had no real evidence, only what I'd overheard. There was nothing else to go on, no signs over the past 6 months of anything unusual. Confronting Kelly or Paul without proof was risky. There was little chance of success. Kelly would deny everything. Paul would back her up. Taking it to court was a financial disaster waiting to happen. Everyone in the local legal and political scene knew Paul Evans. Lawyers, judges, even politicians. I'd be buried, just to protect his name. The thought of walking away, starting fresh, crossed my mind. It was tempting, but the house kept me anchored. Kelly couldn't afford it on her own, and we had little equity. She'd have to sell it quickly to avoid foreclosure, but the market was awful right now. It would ruin both of our credit scores. For someone in my profession, a bad credit score was a deal breaker. How could I be trusted with other people's finances if I couldn't even manage my own? I needed proof before I could take action. The evidence came from the most unexpected place. 3 days later, I hadn't found a thing to confirm what I'd overheard. Kelly's personal laptop was spotless. No secret accounts, no hidden receipts, nothing. Then Kelly called me at work. "We've been invited to a political party at Paul Evans' house on Friday night," she said. I assumed it was for his big announcement about running for U.S. Senate. This could be it, I thought. An opportunity, but still no solid proof. Damn it. We arrived just in time for the event. Paul Evans' house was a mansion near Washington, with a sprawling yard that even had a small horse farm in the back. They'd set up a large tent for the reception. As we walked in, there he was, Paul Evans, standing at the head of the greeting line, looking like he owned the place. Being a widower, he didn't have a wife to play hostess, but his 21-year-old daughter was by his side, greeting guests as if she'd been trained for the role. When it was our turn, Paul grinned at Kelly. "Kelly, you did it! How wonderful!" he said, planting a quick kiss on her cheek. Then he turned to me. "Robert, it's great to see you again. I'd be lost without Kelly, but I understand I'll soon have to give her up when you start expanding your family." He laughed at his own joke. "Just let me know when you're done with her and I'll take her off your hands. No hard feelings." Kelly blushed slightly, and I fought to keep my temper in check. I understood exactly what he was implying. "Who knows what the future holds?" I said flatly, keeping my tone neutral. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of reacting. Paul turned to the next guest, and Kelly elbowed me, whispering something about how rude I was. We moved on, but as we were introduced to Paul's daughter, Barbara, I couldn't help but notice. Kelly was undeniably beautiful, but Barbara was stunning. Even in my anger, I couldn't ignore how she looked. Auburn hair, a perfect smile, and a figure that reminded me of a classic pinup. If Kelly was like a ballerina with curves, Barbara could have been the star of any swimsuit calendar. She was the kind of woman photographers dreamed of, with a natural beauty that seemed too perfect to be real. Paul Evans had crafted the perfect political family: his late wife, the saintly widow, and Barbara, the brilliant, photogenic daughter. The media would eat it up. Losing his wife had only made him a more perfect candidate, a grieving widower with a stunning daughter. "Robert!" Barbara said brightly, wrapping her arms around me in a hug. This wasn't just a polite greeting. It was a full-body embrace, and her body pressed against mine in ways I couldn't ignore. "You look amazing," she added, her voice almost teasing. "No wonder Kelly keeps you hidden away. You never come to any of our events. You shouldn't work so hard. It's bad for your health." She said all of that in one breath, as if it were perfectly normal. In that instant, my rage shifted to shock. I managed a few polite words about how beautiful she looked, but I was already processing two things. First, Barbara had never greeted Kelly, and second, what kind of parties was she talking about? I didn't have time to ask, though, because Kelly immediately rushed over to greet Barbara. We were then ushered aside for the next guests. As Kelly and I wandered through the crowd, mingling with guests, my thoughts kept returning to Barbara. What did she know? Was she dropping subtle hints, or was it all just teasing? While pouring Kelly a drink, I asked, what was Barbara talking about when she mentioned those parties? Kelly waved the question away with a laugh. "Oh, she's just being a brat. Paul hosts team meetings and strategy sessions here sometimes. He says he thinks better with a drink in hand, and a bar isn't exactly private. Barbara was home a few times when we had those meetings. Don't let this go beyond us, but Paul let her drink at home before she turned 21. The pieces started clicking together. Paul didn't need to sneak away to a hotel or find secluded spots for his affair with Kelly. His house was perfect. No paper trail, no prying eyes, and plenty of plausible reasons for her to be there. These so-called meetings could have been legitimate gatherings where Kelly stayed late, or perhaps left and returned after everyone else had gone. It was the ideal setup to avoid suspicion from the legal team. "So, Barbara attends these meetings?" I pressed. Kelly laughed again, dismissing the idea. No, she was just around the house a few times when classes were canceled. She's poking fun at her dad for mixing work with drinking. Tugging at my hand, she added, "Come on, buy your young wife a drink." For the next hour, Kelly stayed close to me, never straying far. We chatted with some of her coworkers, and I lost count of how many people congratulated us on our plans to have a baby. I felt a strange mix of embarrassment and irritation. Why did all these people know such personal details about our lives? An hour later, Paul Evans stepped up to the microphone, his daughter smiling by his side. He thanked everyone for coming and launched into the announcement everyone had been expecting, his Senate campaign. The crowd buzzed with excitement, including a local journalist and photographer who were clearly prepping for tomorrow's headline. I won't bore you with the details of the party. It might have been enjoyable if my heart wasn't shattered and my mind wasn't working overtime, trying to figure out how to expose the truth. About 90 minutes after the announcement, Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, arrived and informed the group that Paul wanted to meet with his staff. Margaret was a force to be reckoned with, respected, tough, and deeply principled. She'd been a constant presence in the DA's office for years, providing stability as prosecutors came and went. Kelly had taken the job largely because of her, and I'd always admired Margaret and her rock-solid marriage to an electrician who now owned a thriving contracting business. They seemed like the kind of couple Kelly and I could have been. "Sorry for stealing your wife, Hogan," Margaret said with a rare smile. "Paul wants to go over some plans for the office once the campaign is underway." Moments later, she and Kelly disappeared into the house. I stepped away from the other spouses, feeling restless, and wandered to the far side of the pool. In the shadows, I found a wicker swing chair hanging from chains, partially hidden from view. It was the perfect spot to sit quietly and sort through my chaotic thoughts. I hadn't been there for more than 5 minutes when a voice interrupted my solitude. "So this is where you're hiding," it purred. I looked up to see Barbara slipping gracefully into the swing next to me. She turned to face me, her little black dress hugging her figure in a way that was both suggestive and reserved, a careful balance of allure and innocence. In my current state of mind, I noted this almost clinically, as though it were an observation detached from emotion. "You look like someone carrying the weight of the world," she remarked, her tone soft but probing. The last thing I wanted was to talk about my turmoil with my wife's lover's daughter, no matter how stunning she was. "It's just work," I said vaguely. "Lots of audits piling up." Barbara's eyes lit up with interest. "Really? I just finished an accounting course at school, and we covered forensic accounting and law enforcement. I thought it was fascinating." Even in my emotional fog, her comment surprised me. "Is that so?" I asked, genuinely curious. "It's not glamorous," she admitted, "but piecing together financial trails is like solving puzzles. It's exciting to uncover the truth, especially when people are trying to hide it." "Most people wouldn't agree," I said, though her enthusiasm was infectious. Barbara launched into a detailed explanation of what she'd learned in her classes and why she loved the subject. I found myself impressed. She spoke with clarity and passion, far beyond what I'd expect from someone just starting out. For a moment, I managed to forget my anger and focus on her words. Mentoring her, even briefly, gave me a reprieve from my inner turmoil. "You seem to really enjoy it," I remarked. "You've got a strong grasp of the subject." Barbara blushed at the compliment, her confident demeanor softening into something more genuine. "I've even thought about joining the FBI after graduation," she confessed. "But my dad wants me to become a prosecutor or work at one of his friend's firms. I'm not sure that's what I want." "You should follow your own path," I advised sincerely, "not your father's. I've worked with the FBI a few times when audits uncovered criminal activity. They're sharp and dedicated." Before Barbara could respond, Kelly appeared out of the shadows, her voice light and teasing. "So this is where you wandered off to. You two didn't get into any trouble, did you?" Barbara turned to her with a wide smile. "Not at all. I was just asking Bob about his work. It's so interesting. He's practically a legend in my accounting class." Kelly beamed with pride. "He's brilliant," she said. "I remember one case where he uncovered an embezzlement scheme by tracking login data. Most people would have stopped when they found the obvious culprit, but Hogan kept digging. The prosecutors barely had to do anything after he was done." Her words left me reeling. How could she look at me with such admiration while carrying on a 6-month affair with Paul? The contradiction was too much to process. Kelly must have noticed my expression because she asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said, brushing it off. "Just thinking about work." "Well, stop it," she scolded lightly. "We're at a party." Then, with barely a pause, she added, "Guess what? Margaret and Paul have given me a new task. I'll handle some admin work as I prepare for maternity leave. Margaret wants everything tied up neatly before I go." A flicker of hope rose in my chest at the thought of Kelly working more closely with Margaret and less with Paul, but it was short-lived. "I'll also be helping Paul during the campaign," she continued. delivering important documents, traveling occasionally. It's not official campaign work, but I'll get to see everything up close. It'll be so exciting. The fragile hope I'd felt crumbled. Of course, Paul wouldn't let her go so easily. The weight of the situation hit me hard, and I felt my heart sink. Kelly had promised that she was going to end the affair so we could focus on starting a family, but now I couldn't shake the nagging fear that she might slip up again, especially with the campaign going on. If she got pregnant, how could I be sure the child was mine? Paul was my size and had the same complexion. Without a DNA test, how would anyone really know? The thought of it made my blood boil, but I fought to keep my emotions in check. This wasn't the time for outbursts. Barbara and Kelly quickly fell into a conversation about Barbara's new role in the campaign, leaving me in the dust. I used the moment to collect myself, knowing that after tonight, things were going to change. I needed a strategy. I had no idea how I was going to take on Paul's political clout, but I had to find a way. 2 days later, the solution walked right into my office. "Your 4 o'clock appointment is here," my assistant called from the doorway. I checked my calendar. It was blank. I was about to ask her about it when she stepped aside and let the visitor in. It was Barbara Evans. "Hey, Hogan," she said, flashing me a confident smile as she entered. Her long auburn hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her light sundress clung to her body, highlighting her fit legs and curves. The dress, though modest, suggested more than it revealed, and the thin straps left her arms bare. I was caught off guard for a moment, unable to speak. "I hope you don't mind," Barbara said, shutting the door behind her. "I told Mary I needed to talk about my career and about Kelly working for my dad." I quickly recovered and stood. "Of course, it's good to see you. Just finishing up some reports." I gestured toward a chair in front of my desk. "What's on your mind?" The smile faded from Barbara's face. "I think you know exactly why I'm here, Bob. I saw it in your eyes when you talked to my dad. I'm sorry. He's ruining a good guy like you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had no idea what she was talking about. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. Barbara didn't hesitate. "That fool of a father of mine is sleeping with your wife." I leaned back in my chair, stunned by her bluntness. "Did you just find out?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "I'm sorry. When did you find out?" "About 3 months ago," Barbara said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "I don't know exactly when it started, but I found out in February. One Friday, I came home early from a lunch with a friend. I was going to drop my stuff off and head out, but Dad asked when I'd be back. I told him after dinner, but my friend got sick, so I came home early instead. That's when I caught them, Dad and Kelly, having sex in our jacuzzi. I even got pictures and video of them running undressed into the house. There was a foot of snow on the ground." You took pictures?" I asked, still in shock. Barbara smirked, as if amused by my reaction. She reached into her bag, pulled out a large envelope, and slid it across my desk. "Here. These are from that day, and several others. My dad installed security cameras at the house, outside and inside. If you have the key fob, password, and know the site, you can access everything. I also have a flash drive with videos." I stared at the envelope, barely able to comprehend what I was seeing. Barbara had just handed me everything I needed to expose her father and end my marriage. "Why?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around it. Barbara's face darkened with anger. "Because I hate him more than you ever could." I waited in silence, letting her words sink in. After a pause, she spoke again. "Dad met my mom when she was in college. He was an up-and-coming lawyer in the Philadelphia Sex Crimes Unit. My mom was from Ireland, escaping the aftermath of losing her family in the Londonderry bombing. She was with some guy who kicked her so badly, she ended up in the ICU. Dad was assigned to her case. They met, the guy went to prison, and a year later they got married. He was always looking for ways to climb the ladder. He got a smart, beautiful woman with an accent, and Mom thought she found someone who would protect her. Then I was born." Her voice grew bitter. "Dad pushed me into gymnastics, thinking it would make me an Olympic champion to help his political career. You know how most gymnastics careers end?" I shook my head. "I don't think I've ever thought about it." "They call it the 3 Bs, bosoms, bums, and boys," Barbara said with a sarcastic smile. "I got the bosoms. Then he pushed me into cheerleading to be the All-American girl. By 16, I realized I was just a pawn in his game. Mom knew about his affairs almost from the start. She begged him to stop, but she was too weak to leave. And because she was Catholic, divorce wasn't an option." Barbara paused, her anger palpable. "I sometimes wonder if her poor health, The way she deteriorated during her cancer treatment wasn't just her giving up on life. When she died, I was at her bedside. The official story was that Dad was in court winning a big case. But in reality, he was celebrating by sleeping with his assistant. He's a monster. I was at a loss for words. "Why are you telling me all this?" I finally managed to ask. Barbara locked eyes with me. "Because you don't deserve this, and I want my father to pay. I want you out of your marriage with that traitor, and I want my father's political career destroyed, so badly that he couldn't even get elected dog catcher in a town full of cats." I considered just releasing the photos to the media or using them to bury Paul politically, but I knew he had too many powerful friends. It was clear that Barbara and I had a common enemy, and together we could bring him down. "What about your school?" I asked. "Won't it be harder to finish?" "No," she replied casually. "My mom left me a trust fund. I haven't touched it, but if I need to, I can pay for the rest of my education, my MBA, and still have plenty left over." I paused. "If your mom had all that money, why didn't she just leave? She could have gone back to Ireland where your father couldn't reach her." Barbara flinched at the question. "Because of her Catholic upbringing. Divorce was never an option for her, no matter what happened. She clung to her faith until the very end. Sometimes I think her end of life wasn't just inevitable, it was unconscious. But I don't really know." I could see the pain in her eyes, and I didn't press her further. What was clear was that she wanted to ruin her father just as much as I wanted to destroy him. She handed me the ammunition I needed. If I played this right, his career, his life, and everything he stood for would crumble. A plan was starting to take shape in my mind, and I needed Barbara's help. But first, I had to test how far she was willing to go. "All right," I said, leaning back in my chair, "but I don't want to destroy him through public humiliation or a scandal in the divorce." Barbara raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" I held up a hand to stop her. "I didn't say we wouldn't destroy him, but I don't want the press to turn me into the betrayed husband. Instead, I want to take away everything he's worked for. The power, the influence, the connections. Then I'll have a quiet divorce, no drama." Barbara stared at me for a moment, then a sly smile spread across her face. "What do you want from me?" I grinned. "I want you to get me his financial documents, his personal records and his campaign finances. They brought Capone down for tax evasion, and I have no doubt I can do the same with your father." She looked at me, intrigued. "And if you don't find anything?" I smiled again. "I'll find another way." For the next 3 days, Barbara and I worked tirelessly. She set up a keystroke logger on her father's laptop and desktop, and she made a complete backup of both devices. We also reconfigured their home security system to automatically upload the data to a cloud storage I had access to, located overseas. I didn't bother with Kelly's phone. The proof Barbara had already given me was more than enough. I attached a GPS tracker to Kelly's phone, one typically used by parents to monitor their children's whereabouts. It didn't use real-time GPS unless I triggered it, instead relying on nearby cell towers for general location. I wasn't about to let her show up unexpectedly while I was preoccupied. The day after Barbara visited me, I faked a groin injury. It gave me an easy excuse to avoid closeness with Kelly. After learning about Paul's numerous affairs, I didn't want to take any more chances. Plus, I didn't think I could go through with it without my anger boiling over. I also made an appointment to get tested for STDs. The initial results came back negative, but I knew some diseases, like HIV, could take months to appear. Kelly headed out for her conference in Pittsburgh, her last meeting with Paul. She was frustrated, but I could tell she was still excited about the trip. It was hard to ignore the fact that no matter how much I resented her, I still loved her. I couldn't trust her anymore, but those feelings didn't disappear overnight. Thursday morning came and Kelly was getting ready to leave. She had her bag packed and was waiting for Paul and a junior lawyer who would accompany them. I couldn't help but wonder if the lawyer knew he was just a pawn in their game. "I'll be back Sunday afternoon," Kelly said, dropping her bag at the door and walking over to me. I was sitting at the table, facing away from her, sipping my coffee. She came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my shoulders, and leaned in to whisper in my ear. "I hope you feel better soon, so we can start thinking about having a baby," she murmured in a voice that was sweet, almost too sweet. It reminded me of better times, and for a second I almost let myself be swayed, but I forced myself to stay composed. "I'll put some ice on it," I said, gently taking her hand and kissing her forehead. She sighed, running her fingers through my hair. "I wish I didn't have to go. It'd be so much better to stay home with you." Just the two of us, all weekend. You could always tell Evans something came up, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes widened, and she looked at me closely. What's your problem with Paul? She asked, genuinely shocked. First you were rude at the party, and now you're talking like you can't stand him. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Honestly, I've seen too many people like Evans, arrogant, power-hungry types who think they're invincible. They act like big fish in a small pond, selling the illusion of power and forcing everyone to buy into it, like that mayor in South Carolina last year. He was this influential guy who stole money from the city and was sleeping with 3 married women. Now he's in prison and they're all divorced and publicly shamed. I get the same vibe from Evans. If he makes it to Washington, he'll be chasing interns in no time. But eventually the facade cracks. When it does, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near him. Kelly looked at me, stunned. She'd heard me vent about people like that before, but I'd never tied Evans to them before. I probably should have kept my mouth shut, but it felt good to get it out. And even though our marriage was over, I still felt like I had a responsibility to warn her. I couldn't trust her anymore, but that didn't erase the fact that deep down, I still loved her. Hogan, that's awful, she said, her voice almost pleading. Paul's a good guy. He's done so much for this community. He's not like that. We heard the sound of a car honking outside. Paul's here, she said with a sigh, her face filled with frustration. She glanced at me, her expression softening into a mix of regret and guilt. I'll be home in 4 days, she said, trying to sound reassuring. We'll talk then, but get ready, love. We're starting a family. She wrapped her arms around me, kissing me deeply. I kissed her back with equal intensity. Have a good week, she whispered against my lips. I love you. I love you too, I replied. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Bye, dear, she called over her shoulder. Goodbye, Kelly, I said, watching her leave. I shut the door behind her and stood there for a moment, processing everything. 30 minutes later, I was on a train heading to the city. Barbara and I had a meeting with the FBI. I wasn't expecting to present any new evidence. They were already aware of Paul Evans's embezzlement scheme. In fact, I'd rate his methods as somewhat clever, but not flawless. Barbara and I met at her off-campus apartment to go over the documents she had retrieved from her father's computer. It was clear that Paul had been hiding money in offshore accounts, and I estimated he had around $2 million stashed away, though I couldn't be sure of the exact balance since the records only showed transfers. Most of the money came from small donors, people whose donations wouldn't attract the IRS's attention. But I couldn't shake the question. Why were people from out of state funding a local district attorney's campaign? I traced a few of these donors back to defendants who had either had their cases dismissed or been given unusually lenient sentences after making some kind of deal. Then Barbara found the real bombshell. It turned out she wasn't the only child of Paul Evans. Over the years, he'd gotten 2 other women pregnant, one of them while his wife was still alive. His mother had worked for him at the time. The 3rd child was born less than a year after his wife's end of life, the result of a relationship with an 18-year-old volunteer at the hospital where his wife had been treated. Evans had been giving each of these women $2,000 a month, disguised as campaign contributions for poll research. Barbara almost tore her apartment apart in rage. I had to admit, her temper was as fiery as her red hair. By the time Kelly and Paul left for Pittsburgh, we'd examined everything in Paul's notes. There were still questions, but we didn't have enough resources to dig deeper. I documented everything and set up a meeting with the senior FBI agent I worked with in Philadelphia. Barbara came along to present the cover story we had concocted. She told Gary, the agent, that after taking a forensic accounting course, she'd decided to look at some real documents. She claimed that, out of curiosity, she'd noticed some strange transactions while reviewing her father's records. She called me for help, since I had experience with these kinds of things. Gary was no fool. He knew there was more to the story. But we had packaged it in a way that made him willing to overlook the obvious. A corrupt prosecutor right in his own backyard, and one who had just launched a campaign for U.S. Senate. This was the kind of career-making scandal he'd been hoping for. Barbara and I took a cab to her place since she had a late class, and I walked over to 30th Street Station to catch my train back home. As I made my way to the station, I considered packing my things and leaving before Kelly came back. Gary had promised to speed things up, at least by getting Evans's documents subpoenaed by Wednesday. I knew it wouldn't be long before the investigation went public, and Evans would soon realize that his so-called power was all smoke and mirrors when everyone started bailing on him. While I was on the train, Kelly called. She told me she was calling early because they were planning a big dinner, and it would be late before she made it back to her room. I had no doubt she wasn't planning on staying in her room at all. I gave her a vague answer, saying everything was fine, but she could tell I was distracted. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice concerned. "I just had a meeting with some FBI agents about something," I said. "I'm on the train and the investigation is still ongoing, so I can't talk about it." It wasn't a lie. Kelly sighed. "I can tell it's bothering you," she said. "This case might blow up. It could make national news if everything comes out. Is it true?" she asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "Can you give me a little hint?" I couldn't resist. Corrupt politicians, bribery, money laundering, affairs, children. "Any of my friends involved?" she asked, her tone darkening. "I've already said too much," I replied. "If I say anything else, the Bureau will shut me down." "Oh, you're no fun," Kelly pouted. "Don't worry, love. Your secret is safe with me." We said our goodbyes, and she hung up as I entered the house. It hit me all at once. My marriage was over. We'd been together for 10 years, dating, marrying, and living what seemed like a normal life. I never imagined being single again. But that's where I was now. I didn't do anything for hours. I just sat on the couch watching the sunset. It felt like I was watching my life disappear into the horizon, a slow, silent sinking. I didn't move until midday Saturday, still trapped in my own head. I couldn't wallow forever. I needed to snap out of it. Ironically, it was while mowing the lawn that I noticed a BMW convertible pulling into my driveway. I stopped the mower and watched Barbara step out of the car. The first thing that caught my eye was her long, toned legs emerging from the driver's side. She was wearing sandals with thin straps that wrapped around her calves, a style that always reminded me of something from ancient Greece. As she stepped out, her muscles flexed in that effortless, athletic way that made her look strong yet graceful. She wore a white dress that flowed like a toga, ending just above mid-thigh, with lace at the hemline that exposed a bit of her upper thigh. The fabric was thin and silky, hugging her body just enough to be enticing, yet semi-sheer. Her bikini top peeked through the fabric and her arms, dotted with light freckles, were bare. The dress slid off one shoulder, leaving her other shoulder exposed. Her long red hair cascaded over the bare shoulder, adding to her already striking look. But it was her piercing gray-green eyes and the smile she gave me as she walked up that really grabbed my attention. I turned off the mower and greeted her. "Well, you look better than I thought," Barbara said with a grin. "I half expected I'd find you drinking straight from a bottle or maybe standing on a ledge." I snorted. Last night I had a lot of thoughts about both. "We had to go through this," she said, her tone light but serious. "Besides, it keeps me distracted." "Have you seen a lawyer yet?" she asked, tilting her head. I shrugged. "I met with one Tuesday before they left. The documents will be ready by Monday. I've agreed to audit a client in Austin, so I'll leave Tuesday. Usually I only spend 3 days on these kinds of trips and work remotely until the report's done. But this time, I'll be there for 3 weeks. I shrugged again. It's probably a cowardly move, but I don't want to be here when all the crap hits the fan. Barbara's face softened, as if she understood. She knew the attention would be on her, too, as the daughter of the man at the center of all this. "Well, I'm glad you're thinking ahead," she said, smiling. "But I also know this is what you're good at." She flashed that smile again, the one that made me forget everything else. "Now I can make my plans, too." "All right," she said, her expression turning mischievous. "Here's the plan. I'll help you finish up here, then you'll come to me. We'll have some fun, and you'll even be able to look at me. And trust me, I have a swimsuit that you'll love." I tried to protest. "Barbara, I'm still married, and I don't think I'm ready for anything right now." "You need to let off some steam before you blow up," she insisted. "Besides, you know the saying, what's good for the goose is good for the goose." Her gaze was playful, sly, but completely without guile. I couldn't help but laugh. In one of those strange twists of fate, we ran into Olivia after I finished my yard work. I cleaned myself up, and we decided to go out for a late lunch at a nice place. I wasn't really in the mood for anything intense, but it felt good to get out of the house. And spending time with Barbara wasn't exactly hard on the eyes. As we approached the restaurant, I saw Olivia's car parked out front. For a moment, I thought about telling Barbara to turn around, but then something snapped inside me. After all the planning, the careful moves, and everything I'd held in, seeing Olivia's car was the tipping point. I took Barbara's hand and led her into the restaurant without a second thought. I slipped a tip to the owner to seat us at a discreet table that was somewhat hidden from view, but still visible when walking back from the restroom. I sat Barbara down, facing outward, and took the seat beside her. She smiled when I took her hand. "Why did you do this?" she asked with a smile. "Not that I'm complaining," I chuckled. "Remember I told you how I found out about Kelly's affair with Olivia? Well, her car's parked right outside." Barbara's laugh was full and throaty. "So I'm the other woman now. Ooh, I can get used to this." She leaned in and kissed me gently on the lips. It wasn't passionate, but it was full of promise. A lover's kiss. Our meals arrived, and for the first time in a while, I actually enjoyed myself. The tension faded as I got lost in Barbara's presence. Her quick wit had me laughing harder than I'd in ages. She made even the simplest things seem hilarious. I glanced behind me and saw Olivia walking past our table, and I pointed it out to Barbara. "Oh my God!" Barbara giggled. "I've been waiting for this." With that, she leaned in and kissed me. My hand slid under the table, brushing against her leg. Her skin was soft, and the muscle underneath felt firm and strong. It was an electrifying sensation. I was so caught up in it that I didn't realize Olivia was screaming at me until the sound cut through the air. "Hogan, what the hell are you doing?" she yelled. "Who's this woman? Sneaking around while your wife's away. I thought you were better than this." I was certain the entire restaurant heard her. I pulled my hand back from Barbara and turned to face Olivia. "What's your problem, Liv? It's just some fun before Kelly and I settle down and have kids. Can you keep it down? People are eating here." Olivia stared at me, stunned, like I'd just slapped her. "What?" she stammered. "Come on, Liv," I said with a shrug. "Kelly's doing the same thing, probably with her boss. So? I figured I might as well have a little fun with his daughter." Olivia looked like she was about to faint. Barbara snickered, and I gave her a gentle squeeze to keep her quiet. "You know about this?" Olivia asked, still in disbelief. "I know I've been playing the loyal, clueless husband while my wife's out there having an affair with a woman I once considered a close friend," I shot back. Olivia flinched, and the disgust in my voice must have hit hard. "I knew Kelly wanted one last fling before having a baby," Olivia muttered. "Like a final adventure before settling down. It's normal for her." I couldn't hold back. "What's your issue with me?" I asked, suspicion creeping in. I didn't know about Kelly's affair with Paul, but as they say, once a cheater, always a cheater. Olivia hesitated. "Do you know about this too?" She sighed. "No, but thanks for confirming," I replied coldly. She went pale. "Go away, Olivia," I said, my patience running thin. Without another word, Olivia turned and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving us to enjoy the aftermath. "Well, that was fun while it lasted," Barbara said with a smirk. "I was hoping she'd stick around longer." I couldn't help but laugh. "You know, she's probably calling Kelly right now," Barbara added. "Probably," I said, grinning. "I give it 5 minutes before my phone blows up." But if Olivia left now, she'd have a 5-hour drive back to Pittsburgh. That gave us some time. Time for dessert and time for me to pack up my things. "Too bad I won't get to see you in that bikini you promised," I said with a wink. Barbara laughed. "Well, I guess we'll save that for later." She leaned in, grabbing my shirt and pulling me closer. "My semester ends in a week and a half," she whispered in my ear. "I've always wanted to see Austin." Her breath was warm on my neck, and I barely caught her words as her tongue brushed my ear. 10 minutes later, Kelly started calling me repeatedly. I listened to her voicemails, filled with fury over my supposed betrayal. I almost found it funny. After hours of her messages and texts, I blocked her number. I knew she'd eventually reach out from another phone, but she was on her way back from Pittsburgh, and there was no way she could easily borrow someone's phone on the highway. When I got home, I packed up everything I owned, not just what I needed for the Austin trip. I had time. 4 hours after my run-in with Olivia, I was leaving for what might be the last time. After booking a hotel near the Philadelphia airport, I stashed most of my belongings in storage. I spoke to Barbara on the phone a few times. She was walking with a friend because her father had been leaving angry messages. I moved my flight up by a day and left for Austin Monday morning. Kelly tried calling me from several different numbers. The messages ranged from tearful rants to accusations that I had ruined her career. It went on for hours until I finally blocked every number. The next day, I found out the story had already gone viral. Someone posted an accurate comment about Barbara and me being gamers, and my remark about Kelly having fun with Paul was shared, along with the fact that they had been together over the weekend in Pittsburgh. The political world, especially at the courthouse, was buzzing. I spent the rest of the week ignoring the media. Friday, I received a letter from Margaret, a senior manager at the DA's office. She apologized for everything that had gone down. She confirmed that Paul had been seeing 2 women outside the office, but she had no idea about Kelly's involvement. She also commended me for using the law to get back at Paul. It had been a wild week in the DA's office. Margaret told me that on Monday, Paul had been trying to clean up the mess and deny any wrongdoing. He claimed it was all his daughter rebelling against her cheating husband. Then, on Tuesday, Kelly was served with divorce papers citing infidelity. The envelope included photos, DVDs, and a letter from me. Margaret and 2 others rushed into Kelly's office after hearing her scream in horror. She collapsed when she saw the evidence. In my letter to Kelly, I explained that I wasn't having an affair, but hoped she now understood how I felt about her and her actions. I told her I couldn't stay married to someone I didn't trust, especially now that I knew she had been unfaithful before. The next day, as Margaret was in a meeting with Paul, 4 men in suits entered the office. When one of them told Paul he was under arrest, he looked completely stunned. They handcuffed him and led him past reporters who had somehow been tipped off. I owe Gary a beer for that one. At the end of Margaret's letter, she apologized for the way Paul and his team had behaved in the office. She also asked me to let her know if I needed anything, acknowledging I didn't deserve the treatment I'd received. I think part of her letter was for damage control, but mostly I believe Margaret was the moral and professional person I had always thought she was. By now, my quiet divorce had been upended by my impulsive move with Olivia at the restaurant. The media quickly latched on, covering every angle of Paul's arrest and the scandal. As I told Kelly, it had all the ingredients of a summer romance: sex, betrayal, revenge, and too much anger. The press loved it. I managed to avoid the worst of it since I was out of town. I stayed in a second hotel room 10 miles away from the one on my work itinerary. Reporters camped out in front of the first one, and I saw them outside my house, filming my relatives coming in and out, while Kelly remained out of sight. Barbara had it the hardest. As the daughter of the man at the center of the mess, she had to go to class while reporters hounded her. Eventually, the school forced the media off campus, though it didn't stop 2 women who had children with Paul from stepping forward to get their own 15 minutes of fame. After her final exit, Barbara slipped off campus and made her way to the airport. The media were disappointed when she didn't show up for graduation, but they weren't surprised. Eventually, the story faded into the background. It briefly flared up again when Paul's trial began, but he pled guilty to multiple charges and was sentenced to 20 years. His guilty plea meant neither Barbara nor I were called to testify. The media eventually lost interest, and the whole ordeal faded away, taking Barbara, Kelly, and me with it. Strangely enough, my divorce was quick and relatively painless. Kelly signed the papers without a fight. 4 days later, I received a letter from her apologizing for everything. She admitted that while she could never forgive me for betraying her, realizing she was the only one cheating made her see how hypocritical she'd been. She agreed to a 50-50th split and asked if I'd meet with her someday, once things had cooled down so she could apologize in person. At the end, she said she'd always loved me and wished me the best. I later heard from her mother that Kelly had quit her job and moved to the Midwest to live with her aunt. Finding Paul was a huge career boost. The FBI gave me full credit for analyzing the tapes, and since I was hiding from the media, I was able to dig deeper in Austin. Not only did I uncover the embezzler they were looking for, but I also found a second one they hadn't even known about. My firm noticed, and I was promoted to head of the white-collar crime team. Some wisecrack even dubbed the team Hogan's Heroes, and I guess I deserved it. But the best part came when I got an assistant, a recent college grad eager to dive into forensic accounting. I had never enjoyed working late more, especially with her around. And well, that bikini looked even better on the floor of my hotel room. As time went on, life found its rhythm. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. My career was on track, and although I'd lost a lot along the way, I had to admit there was a certain freedom in it all. Barbara and I kept in touch, though it was always complicated, thanks to the media circus. The press eventually moved on, as they always do, and the noise died down. With Paul's conviction, the scandal faded, and I could finally focus on what really mattered: my future, my work, and the people who actually meant something to me. As for Kelly, I heard she'd started over in the Midwest. She'd taken a new job and was trying to rebuild her life. I never saw her again, and honestly, I didn't need to. What was left between us was broken beyond repair. In the end, my impulsive actions at the restaurant, the chaos that followed, and the fallout with Olivia had changed everything. I wasn't the same man who'd walked into that dinner, naive, complacent, and clueless. That night, as messy and chaotic as it was, marked the beginning of something new, something painful, yet transformative. Somehow, after all that, I felt like I'd come out on top.